Okay, so my presentation is on the United States lag in addressing modern issues. So first, I'll start off by addressing my stimulus connections, and I'll address the significance of the issue, which will lead to my research question, where I'll discuss my findings, how they led to my conclusion, the limitations and implications, and then obviously my references. So let's start off. What are modern issues? John Spacey, a researcher on societal structures, defines them as problems, challenges, concerns, opportunities, and risks that are relevant to contemporary life. Spacey's study site, Simplicable, also adds that they are current economic, social, and environmental issues that arise during periods of transition. That leads me to my first stimulus connection, which is False Nostalgia by Johan Norberg, a Swedish historian and fellow at the Cato Institute. Norberg references Donald Trump's first term, the use of nostalgia and political rhetoric with his slogan, "Make America Great Again." And he warns against politicians that use this nostalgia and political rhetoric, as he says that it can have a focus on outdated policy and neglect modern policy. This relates to how Spacey discussed that evolves in transition modern issues, as in transition it's just the past, and with a focus still on the past, it ignores this transition. My next stimulus, Of Memory and Democracy by Colin Powell, who was the first African American Secretary of State, provides a different viewpoint, because it says not necessarily nostalgia, but it says that reflection on the past can be important in a way, and actually good for democracy, in a way that reflecting on past tragedies like 9/11, the Vietnam War, stuff like that, can impact or ensure that it doesn't repeat itself. And so that provides kind of a counterpoint that supports reflection, but in a different sense. To address the significance of the issue, according to the International Monetary Fund, the United States has the largest economy in the world at over 30 trillion, and that ranks 1 out of 196 countries tracked. However, as published by Dublin University Press, Jeffrey Sachs, an economist, and a team of researchers, they rank just 44th out of 167 nations tracked by the UN in addressing the Sustainable Development Goals, which is, from my research, probably the best representation of the modern issues as discussed by Stacey. This just shows, this difference between the first ranking and the second ranking shows the disproportion, and this mismatch shows that the issue is not within the United States resources and wealth, but it's how they're spending them. As in proportion, or in relativity to their large economy, they have poor success in addressing modern issues. This led to develop my research question: to what extent does the U.S. disproportionately lag behind in addressing contemporary issues, and why? The two parts of this question, to the extent and why, will both be covered in my process and findings. So first, we'll look at the extent. So as seen by this image, which is data from the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, or the OECD, the United States has the highest level of income inequality among G7 countries. G7 countries are a group of 7 countries that are of the highest economic level of the most developed countries on the planet. And the fact that the U.S., this uses a Gini coefficient, which 0 essentially means the most, equal 1 is the most wealth inequality, and the U.S. being the only one above 0.4, significantly above 0.4 at that, just shows that the current economic system in the United States just completely ignores or neglects the modern issue of inequality, which is one of the Sustainable Development Goals. The OECD also says that 15% of Americans are below the poverty line. However, the top 20% of Americans make up half of the GDP. Going back to the Sustainable Development Goals, as we can see by this image, there are 0 SDGs that have been achieved, as denoted by the color. We can see that on every single one, challenges, significant or major challenges, all remain. In fact, 15 out of the 17 Sustainable Development Goals, significant or major challenges remain. One of these is the good health and well-being, which is the third one. This is addressed by Dr. Jessica E. Ho, a sociologist affiliated with USC. who says that the United States has low life expectancy in their economic group, despite having a record $4.3 trillion in health expenditure. That's as published in the Oxford Unity Press, and also shows that the problem is not within the amount of money or the size of the economy, but how we are spending it, and really the system of our healthcare. Another one is SDG 13, and again, this applies to all modern issues, but this is just the main ones I focused on, which is climate activism. As published in the same report from the UN and Dublin University Press, major challenges remain as denoted by the red color of the tile, which is a result of the Y, which we'll cover. According to Martina Egina, the editor-in-chief at Earth.org, which is a reputable non-governmental organization or NGO, pressure from conservatives and regressive nostalgic policy can hinder activism, particularly on climate, which takes us back to SDG 13 and why that happens. This article also says that Meta, following the election or inauguration of the second term of Donald Trump, Meta removed both of its climate activist pages, and this follows this pattern that we're seeing with corporations kind of bowing down to corporate leadership. Also, Albert Seiss of the MIT Department of Urban Studies says that passivity by municipal and national governments is no longer an option. This shows, obviously, we have the image, the state and federal government, they're fighting, and so much policy action doesn't get done. It's like kind of polarization, to where if the local governments are arguing for one thing, but national government or executive power is too great, then governmental dysfunction happens because of that. Additionally, there's also what is called party polarization. Democrats and Republicans, as denoted by the graphic, don't fit together. So if arguments, obviously you want to have a broad perspective of, you want to have different perspectives, so we can combine them, but if they can be implemented but cohesively, then that can create problems with getting anything done in the first place. This leads all to my conclusion, where a combination of dysfunction between federal and state governments, as well as party polarization, can lead to governmental dysfunction, whereas use of nostalgia and political rhetoric can lead to modern neglect and contemporary issues. Balanced government and modern focus, as well as long-term efficiency, are the applications, because it focuses on the future, as well as but it has difficult to enforce and is not really within control, as federal and state government are really hard to get to work together cohesively. This leads back to my question, and the U.S. to a high extent disproportionately lagged behind in addressing contemporary issues due to political dysfunction and governmental inefficiency. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, oral defense questions now.
Okay.
What different lenses and perspectives did you explore as you conducted your research?
So the main lenses, I would say, it addressed a variety of lenses. I would say the main ones are political, economic, and environmental, because I talked a lot about climate as far as environmental, with the source of, well, I used the Rachel Carson Council, who compared past focus on economics. What I included in my IWA, I didn't include in this, is that the U.S. was a leader in environmental advocacy in the 1970s, but because we were stuck on past issues, which that wasn't a past issue since we were a leader in that. Now it's gotten worse. So I definitely focus on environmental. Economic, I talked a lot about, I mentioned the IMF, we have the largest economy in the world, however, we're not spending it correctly. And politically, obviously, has to do with the federal and state governments it's cited by, the OECD, that talked a lot about the dysfunction in government. And so those are, I'd say, the three main lenses that I've used.
Awesome, thank you. And as you look ahead to studies future in the next couple of years and beyond, in college, what investigations do you think this research project has kind of led you to start thinking about that you might want to explore?
Of course. So I think right now, I'm not sure exactly what I want to major in, but I definitely am interested in political science or doing something related to poli-sci, maybe psychology if I want to explore different fields. But I feel like especially like how psychology and storytelling can influence government and just reform in general, and especially how it applies to our like getting into it at this era where it's kind of chaotic politically, and this generation. So I feel like that is part of my reason for motivation, and that's what this had a lot to do with.